Okay, folks, we're live for number 125. As usual, I'm going to kill a few seconds here waiting for my live viewers to connect. If you're watching this on the replay, go ahead and just fast forward it a smidge. I can see my folks coming in. Hello, Lisa and Heather. Feeling good today. Happy to jump into this 125th episode. Nice round number. And you can see we're in the 13th today in the very typical sort of. Okay, sorry folks. Sorry for that little blip. I had a technical issue there. Hopefully the signal is going to be good enough for us today. Okay, why don't we jump into it now that all of you have connected. Thanks so much, and if you are watching live, I'll remind you that the Super Chat feature should be available if you want to throw a tip or a donation my way to support the cause and to support this project. That is, of course, always appreciated. I'll try to give you a shout out and a thank you if I see that pop up in the live chat. Hello, Phyllis Cartwright, and Lisa is here. Great to have you all. So let's jump into this episode. This is the 13th Arrondissement. We're in the southeastern portion of Paris, and it's known for, among other things, the 13th, known for these beautiful street art murals. And they are grand, and they are colorful and bold, and sometimes quite thought-provoking. So I've got a lot to show you here. We're going to stick to basically one avenue today, and we're going to see that it's virtually an outdoor gallery. There's a lot of modern architecture in the 13th Arrondissement, which actually lends itself to these kinds of projects because we have these large flat walls on the sides of these apartment complexes without too many windows. And so it provides a perfect canvas for artists. And you really got to give a shout out to one gallery owner in particular. His name is Mehdi Ben Sheikh. And Mehdi Ben Sheikh is the one whose idea it was to use this boulevard in the 13th Arrondissement and to invite all the best street artists from around the world, an international group of artists, to come and have the honor of painting a mural here in Paris. And so they're all along this one boulevard called the Boulevard Vincent Auriol, and we're going to move from sort of between the Place de l'Italie and the Seine River. And I apologize, I'm having very unexpected connection issues. So this boy on the swing here at Petit Prince, this is a French artist named Pacon. You can see a pigeon enjoying the view up there. And Pacon, this artist, does a lot of cherry blossoms in full bloom. And you can see the boy's got a little treehouse up there. And so a nice splash of color, a nice splash of nature. And you can see sometimes these murals are grouped together. So we can catch a view of another one here from another French artist there called Wen2, W-E-N-2. And he is from Brittany, and in Brittany there's a famous lighthouse in the middle of the water, sticking out of the water, that is painted in this very Breton sort of black and white color pattern. So that's what the lighthouse actually looks like in Brittany. And so we've got all those beautiful details there. And this was all really the idea of one man, going by the last name of Sheikh, who's a gallery owner, and decided that he wanted to turn this avenue into a veritable open-air art gallery. Now, if you see here, as we make our way along here, you see a very interesting set of, not hieroglyphs, but very old medieval manuscript text. I'm going to take you around to the front of the building, and we're going to see that as well. It continues around the corner, actually. It sits atop of a library, which I'll get into in a moment. But if we back up here, you can see this beautiful. This artist calls himself Cryptic. And this is actually a poem that he translated into old medieval style Latin texts, like from the illuminated manuscripts of the Middle Ages. And so it's a sort of an encrypted poem. If you want to have the translation of the poem, all you have to do is go into the bookstore down below there, and you can get a translation from the bookstore. This artist was described, as I was researching this, using a word that I really liked. It was called calligraffiti. I think that's pretty apropos calligraphy. So again, we've got the Place d'Italie at our backs. We're going to be heading slowly down this Boulevard Vincent Auriol to enjoy some street art murals if you're just joining me. If we pause right here, we can get another look at the one that we saw earlier of the lighthouse in Brittany. We don't have to go too far at all for another one. Let me zoom in a little bit for you. This one here is called Sundays with a Z. This mural is by two twins of Spanish origin called How and Nozem. And we've got the natural reference to the sun and the mountains, but then also, if you can make it out here, lots of intricate designs referencing chains and machinery and keyholes and watches and clocks. I can see someone asking which arrondissement this is. This is number 13. And thank you, Lisa, for the support in the chat. I appreciate that. One last look at Sundays. And then I don't know if you caught it on the right of your screen, but we've got another one as well. Oops, sorry. This is called Regard sur le boulevard, or a look upon the boulevard. It's by an English artist called Hush, who spent a lot of time in Hong Kong and Japan, and that culture really left an impression on him. And so his art aims to create a sort of fusion between Eastern and Western cultures. And he was particularly taken by the beautiful fabrics that the women would wear over there. And so as we pan down here, we can see all sorts of loveliness. Someone just said my English is very good. Thank you for that. I am American, so I don't have to work too hard. It's when I speak French that I have to work hard. Very apropos to have something like this, an Asian woman in this mural, because the 13th Arrondissement is also known for a large Asian community. The Parisian Chinatown, so to speak, exists in this neighborhood, in this district, although not exactly where we are, but in the 13th. All right, so we can pop off of the... Get my bike going here. You can pop off the sidewalk here. I don't recommend riding on the sidewalk as usual. Doing it only out of necessity today for this episode. Our tour today takes us right along Metro line number 6. You'll see there's an elevated set of train tracks for the Metro, line 6. And just where the train comes up out of the ground, you can see there are some smaller scale pieces of street art. Yes, Tara back, one of our longtime viewers and supporters. It's her birthday today, so everybody give Tara a nice warm welcome and a big old happy birthday. Speaking of the 6 train, what's interesting is this line number 6 here running through the 13th, this elevated line here, represents what used to be the border of Paris during the time of the French Revolution in the 18th century. And there used to be a tax barrier all around the perimeter of what was then the edge of Paris. And so this follows it. And that tax barrier, when you basically brought any goods into Paris from the outside, you'd have to pay a hefty tax, as was the king's wishes at the time. And that was one of the many reasons that the French Revolution got dusted up, because there's so much taxation, in particular along this border wall. And now it's no longer a wall, it's the number 6 line. And to the north, it's the number 2 elevated metro that follows the path of the same wall. It's called the wall of the Fermiers Généraux. Here we've got a small playground, but with another beautiful, oh, look at that, it's gorgeous. I really like this one. This one is called Turncoat, and it's by a very well-known London street artist by the name of D-Face. And it's spelled D*face, D-Face, so a bit of a play on words there. Real name is Dean Stockton. But I find a lot of these artists have pretty interesting pseudonyms. He is a lover, D-Face, of comic books and pop art, Andy Warhol, Roy Lichtenstein, and so you can see direct evidence of that. And I really like the interesting, somewhat ambiguous expression. I've been trying to figure out if she's being seductive or jealous or slightly perturbed, annoyed, filled with ecstasy. I don't know, it's just interesting here. And it's right against the backdrop. She's looking over the kids in the playground there. So that's D-Face, and we'll come across another one of his for sure. We don't have to go too far for the next ones. We've got two right here. We've got a cat. Let's get the lamp post out of the way and that thing out of the way. There we go. This is one of the older murals. Most of what we're going to see today, remarkably, are just from within the last few years. 2017, 2018, 2019, many of these come from that period. This one's a little bit old, a few years older. And it's by an artist called C215, who is a major player in the French street art scene. And of course, it's a great honor when they get invited by Mr. Chic, the gallery owner, whose idea this was, and also the mayor of the 13th Arrondissement. They teamed up and they invite and commission these artists from all around the world to come, and it's a great honor for them to display their work in Paris. Of course, traditionally the capital of art and culture in many ways. And then up here, let's see if we can get we got a pretty good view of this one. You might notice that traditional French motto of Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité. And this is a figure called Marianne, symbol of the Republic. Let me get us a slightly better view. There we go, without killing myself. This is from an artist that calls himself Obey, and he famously did if you remember the very famous poster of Obama's face that was sort of stenciled with red and blue, and that very famous poster for Obama's campaign of hope, the Hope campaign, was done by this same artist, Obey. He's an American street artist, and this is from 2016. It was put here in response to the terrorist attacks of 2015 as a sign of sort of support and the idea that France would bounce back. And Macron, current president of France, liked it so much he asked the artist to make a smaller version on canvas for his office, presidential office. So there is a version hanging in the president's office at the moment. Thanks, Debbie Kuzinski. I really appreciate that. She says, I'll be in this area next month. I'll definitely take a walk up the street. Yeah, Boulevard Vincent Auriol. It's pretty easy to find. It goes from Place d'Italie towards the Seine. One last thing, if we zoom way in, how much can we zoom here? Do you see there's a blue tear under Marianne's eye? That wasn't part of the original painting. The original version did not have a blue tear. But what happened is because this motto, or this credo of the values of the French Republic, liberty, equality, or equality, and fraternity, sometimes rubs people the wrong way when they feel like there are too many injustices being done by the French and by the French government to claim that these values are actually sound and actually true. So this was vandalized not too long ago, and someone went up there, or a group of people, and crossed out the words and vandalized it. And so the artist came back and fixed it up. But the artist, as a way to show solidarity with those who are trying to speak out against the injustices in France, decided to add this blue tear as a way to show whoever vandalized this and didn't agree with the message, to show them, hey, I get it. I'm also on your side as well. So this is a reminder that the idea is that France lives up to those values, but then, of course, sometimes falls short, and we need to keep that in mind as well and think of ways to remedy that. So a classy move by Obey. He did three murals here in this space, and so we're gonna check all those out, or at least a couple of them. This next one, we're gonna have to borrow the sidewalk just for a moment. Try not to bother these folks too much, but you're gonna see we got a very colorful number coming up in front of us. Little splash of blue. I'll explain what this blue tiling is on the other side of the boulevard, because we're going to go up one side and then down the other. This one's got a bunch of sunlight on it. Let's see if we can reduce the glare a little bit. So this is a flamingo, if you can make it out. A flamant rose, as they say in French. This is by an artist called May, and he lives in the southern. He's from the region, a region in the south of France, along the water. And there's a lot of symbolism here. This is him riding a flamingo. A flamingo was one of the popular animals and symbols of his region in southern France. As is this color, this sort of melon color as a backdrop, is representative of the cantaloupes and the melons that are famous for coming from this region of southern France, La Camargue. So tons of symbolism here, a bit more than our other pieces that we've looked at so far. For example, let's see what I can zoom in here. This is the artist, and as a symbol of his past as a graffiti artist, you can see he's holding a can of spray paint there, which is actually sort of deconstructing itself and unraveling at the bottom. And then he's not spraying paint, rather he's spraying butterflies as a symbol of his support for nature and the fight to preserve and conserve nature. What else do we got? We've got here on his wrist symbolism of a horseshoe. I would assume that that's because he feels like a very lucky man, and a couple of wristwatches. And then here in his right hand, he's holding a keychain, and if you can see, there's a little Eiffel Tower doodad attached to his keychain. So a nod to Paris itself as a city. What we can also do is scan down to the flamingo's leg, and that might be tough to make out, but there's a like sheet musical notes wrapping up around the leg of the flamingo, le flamant rose. So this is bright and beautiful and bold and really makes you stop and just enjoy a moment out of your day. Which is what most of these are designed to do, I guess. So that's by artist May, M-A-Y-E. Thanks, Jay Palmer, who says, absolutely love your tours. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm glad you appreciate it. Pam Moore says, such interesting information. Love this. Thanks, everybody. Whew, that shoulder spent. Let me switch arms and make our way down. Follow. And it just wouldn't be a live tour without the sirens as a soundtrack. Ah, here we've got someone photographing something. And it was another mural. This one's also by Obey, the guy who did the Hope poster for Obama's campaign. And for those of you who, in your mind's eye, if you can imagine that Obama poster, you'll see that this is actually more in that same vein of almost sort of a stenciled vibe. Oh, thanks, Marlene, who says you certainly did your homework, Corey. Thanks, Marlene. Yes, I did try to prepare at least a little something to say about each one rather than just pointing the camera at it. It also happens to be a nice subtle little flower motif up there. In the center of this flower, I don't know if you can make it out on your screen, probably not, but there's a star, and in the center of the star there's the face of, believe it or not, the professional wrestler Andre the Giant. And that is another symbol or another common theme that this artist Obey will use, is Andre the Giant's face, believe it or not. Even like 10 years ago, when I moved here to Paris, I saw Andre the Giant's face on stickers stuck on lampposts and street signs and whatnot, and I had no idea back then that it was the same artist. I want to remind you to hit the thumbs up if you wouldn't mind, because that actually helps quite a bit. And what I want to show you here is not the sky. As we wait for the light, I want to show you this beautiful view down the street. You got a dead straight shot toward a very little known church called Notre-Dame de la Gare. And sorry about that. I'm going to take, during the tour extension after this, I'm going to take my Patreon supporters in that direction to check out this very church. So while we've got the light, let me try to, there's a bike lane over here that we can use. Now I saw earlier that the cell signal in this section is a little wonky, so I'm going to keep an eye on that. If I happen to lose connection, just bear with me and try to wait for a minute until I get to a spot that has better signal. We've got 2 here coming up, as you can well see. In fact, 3. As we go by, we'll just do a quick pan. This one is just a graphic design of sorts. But pure. We've got 2 men in a rather interesting embrace here. This is yet another artist. This is an Irishman named Conor Harrington. And he likes to use images from photos that he takes in a studio. He dresses up men in period costumes and then puts them in various scenes and stages them in various poses. And then he will work off of those photos when he's up there painting the mural. In fact, there are photos of the installation of this, and you can see the artist literally standing up on the scaffolding with a paintbrush in one hand and the photo in his other hand as a reference. So these are 2 men wearing Baroque style period clothing. And it's one of those intentionally ambiguous poses, because on one hand it looks like it might be a greeting, it might be an artistic or political exchange, but then also there are undertones of, the rather taboo relationships back then that of course wouldn't have been spoken about. So there's a lot of interpretation here if you're willing to take a moment out of your day. But this artist, Conor Harrington, clearly you can see he prefers a much more painterly aspect, almost relating back to the old masters, the Renaissance masters and the Baroque painters of Rubens and whatnot. So he's going for that it looks like an actual painting rather than just a graphic, almost comic book style representation. And this one, I actually misspoke. This is technically birds. The closer I look at it, you can see some bird figures in there. Thanks, Dottie Brown, for the support. I really appreciate that. As well as Jean Pomeroy. Thanks so much. Appreciate your generosity. Let's make our way here and hope that cell signal holds up. This one's called La Madre Secular, and it is a Madonna figure, but not in the biblical sense. It's meant to be a secular Madonna for all mankind, so to speak. And this one is just beautiful, big and vibrant. This was it is part of a trilogy that started with a mural painted down in Marseille, and then this was number 2, and then the 3rd one of the trilogy was done in Lisbon. And so it is a secular version of a Madonna, and instead of representing religion, it's knowledge, skepticism, science, things like that. For example, if we zoom in here, one detail that is a favorite of mine, this Madonna has not a biblical apple, but a Newtonian apple. In other words, that G with an arrow pointing down stands for gravity, so that is Newton's apple that fell on his head rather than a biblical apple. And then you can see all of the who knows what, a bit of mysticism perhaps, we'll throw that in there as well. And then against this beautiful backdrop of the rose motif. And a halo of sorts, even put a halo behind her head with a slight change in the color there. I happen to love the little chimney pots up top. A fun contrast there. So she is, if we can zoom out as much as possible. Corinne Mateo asks what the skulls are. I don't know. The skulls might be a reference to the occult or anatomy and science. And I found that even the artists, when they were asked about this when I was researching this, they don't always necessarily like to give the full explanation of, as you would imagine, they enjoy people coming up with their own ideas. All right, so onward. Now here the cell signal is definitely going to get wonky, so please bear with me. Hopefully, but it wouldn't be a street art episode unless we the famous mosaic installations. And there's a fun one that maybe some of you might not know about. That's just right down here against the side of a hospital. We're not going to get quite that far today, but that's where we are. Okay, good. We've got the light, so we can turn here. And some of you might recognize this character right away, and then others perhaps not at all. But I'll explain it in a second. So this is for those of you who were fans of that series House, starring Hugh Laurie. This is Invader's version of it, done in his classic mosaic style. This is one of the grander and one of the largest mosaics that I've seen from Invader. There are certainly some others, but this one is pretty fun. Of course, House, or in French what they call him, is Dr. House. That's the name of the show. And when my wife Charlotte was watching that show religiously, I always thought it was funny when she would tell me in English, I'm going to go watch Dr. House. I thought it was kind of charming. Just the adding of that doctor just didn't sound quite right. And then if we zoom in, you can see what's cute is, first of all, the big beautiful blue eyes of Hugh Laurie, and then that little Space Invader figure carrying his equipment. I scanned this with the Invader app, and it's 100 points. The name of it has a title. It's called House is in the House. House is in the House. And I got to give a shout out quickly to Laura Murals. Thanks so much for the support. She says, Corey, your tours are never boring. Oh, that's nice. Thank you for your informative and learning experiences. Oh, that's very sweet, Laura. Thank you. So yeah, that's a 100-point Invader. You don't come across one of those every day. And you know, Invader really likes to base his installations on the theme of where they're being placed. You know, there's very often a link, and this happens to be the side of a hospital. A quick little turnaround. You can see here that the number 6 train of the metro is above us, heading toward the Seine. And once again, just a reminder that this used to be the eastern border of Paris, pre-French Revolution, which was a tax barrier that was none too popular to the masses, and one of the many reasons they revolted in the end. Thanks for all the support in the super chats today, everybody. That really does make a big difference and helps me to continue these episodes week after week. I had a bum foot last week, you may have noticed, but I'm all healed up, as you can see. It's not bothering me at all, so we're good to go. Feeling good. Same boulevard, Boulevard Vincent Auriol. Just going in the opposite direction now, and we're at the next one here around the corner. Let me hop off and get out of the street here. Speaking of Invader, you can see one there on the left where it says cost. That is Invader as well, and that happens to be worth 100 points if you scan it into the app. But this profile that we see here I'm a little bit winded after that bike ride. It's called Profile, and it's by an artist called David de la Mano. He loves to do these rather minimalist profiles, always in silhouette and always facing the same direction. Now at first, even I made the mistake. You can look at it quickly and say, oh, okay, well, it's a bunch of black men that are all melding into this face. But if you zoom in, you actually see there's incredible variation of the men themselves. Some of them have smaller men on their heads. There's one there wearing a sort of a dunce cap. Further up, you've got one that's a wolf there towards the center of your screen, all the different animals holding various objects. So that's really great. You know, we could have cut some corners by just making all of the silhouettes similar. But there's actually a beautiful, you can really spend some time with this looking at all the characters. Got a guy with a flag, a bird on his head, branches for limbs, and all kinds of things. Hey, David Dubois. Merci beaucoup. Oh, David says he's only got 30-some days until he's headed to Nice. Congrats, David. Good for you. You're going to love it. You're going to eat well down there. Okay, so that's Profile from 2015. Thanks, Lisa Cruz. She says, Corey, thanks. I appreciate the history research and social political aspects. And then I can't see the rest. It faded out, but I'm gonna check that. Don't worry. I'm gonna finish that thought for you once we stop again. I love this one coming up here. Love it, love it, love it. We'll get to that colorful rainbow one in a minute, but let's do this one first. It's a bit in the shadow, but this ballerina here actually has the title on the bottom. Et j'ai retenu mon souffle, which means, and I held my breath. In a very vintage style. Two artists based out of New York City, which I imagine is the city represented here, has definitely a New York feel. And this was their first mural that they ever did in France, 2016. Let me finish that comment that I was reading. So yeah, Lisa Cruz says, I enjoy the social political aspects of your tours along with your charming casual comments. I appreciate that. Next up is my personal favorite of the episode. This is by an artist called Seth, who's also very popular, does a lot of large-scale street art in Paris, and very often uses children, young boys as subject matter. This is called Enter the Vortex, and it is representative of a young boy, despite his, whatever his situation might be, is using his imagination, the colors of his imagination, to escape or transcend his current situation. And it's beautifully painted all along this building here. I really like this one. Speaks to me here. I really think it's fantastic. What's fun is I just noticed this today when I came by. There are two parasols up there in the balconies, and you can see the red one matches perfectly. It's the perfect color, matching with the mural on the facade, and then a green one that doesn't quite match the rainbow theme, but still, I think that's pretty fun. There happen to just be two random parasols that are adding an extra splash of color to what is already a very vibrant scene. Thanks, Ricky Beltran, for that support. So awesome. You're all so awesome. Okay. Onward. You don't have to go far for the next one. This one is more silly and fun. So I'll give you the full view and then I'll tell you what is written. This panda up here doesn't look very reassured to be at the top of the tree. So the inscription down there says in French that there only remain 1,600 pandas in the world, in nature. And then it says there won't be enough for everyone. And you can see that it's signed Tignus. Tignus is the artist there. Just one more quick look. But isn't this great? I mean, in a neighborhood where, architecturally speaking, otherwise, you wouldn't say it's particularly engaging, visually engaging, these buildings. But this is just an amazing initiative. And real big shout out to Mr. Chic, who's the gallery owner and the who's behind this idea. And of course, the mayor of the 13th Arrondissement, who agreed to invite these artists and to give them a side of the building. Sometimes multiple buildings for certain artists. We've got a couple here on the right-hand side. I'm going to have to cross the street to enjoy them. Which we shall do right now. This is unexpected. Check this out here on the ground. Maybe covering up a pothole of sorts. Art is all around today, folks. The sun is shining and art is all around. So let us cross here into the bike lane where we're safe and sound. That's what I wanted to show you there, photographer, with a great splash of sunlight there. Good timing for us there. He takes up the whole frame. Yeah, very modern architecture here. Packing in a lot of residents here in the 13th Arrondissement. Tough to pronounce the name of this artist. I can see a sign at the bottom. Seems to be Janondis. Janondis is my guess. And that may be him. And the girl, or it might be her. Look at this. Even though on the other side it's not painted, there's actually a little bit of colorful variation on this building. All right. That is the same church that I showed you earlier. Thanks, Nancy Brisson, for the support there. I see you. I see you there, Nancy. I appreciate you. So yeah, that church in the distance is what I'm going to show. One of the things that I'll show my Patreon supporters in the tour extension after this episode. Going back past the one, the boy with a rainbow. It's worth another look. Just the colors themselves. And then there's a nice park here with some colors and whatnot. Flowers. Cute spot. No idea what the name of that park is, but thanks, Lynn Sakai. It's great to have you. She says, thank you, Corey, for inspiring. And it faded out on me. Hold on. When I don't have two hands, it's hard for me to keep track of these comments. But she says, thanks for inspiring to add more days to my upcoming visits. Oh, thank you, Lynn. Appreciate that. There's another train going by. And there's some nice brickwork, actually, if you can make that out. on the elevated tracks. I've always appreciated that little bit of aesthetics. Little bonus there. That's really old school art mural work. Really old school. Actually gonna stop here and hop off for two reasons. We just passed, remember I showed you a little glimpse of the blue sort of tile work. This is from 2019, it's called Azuleos No. 2 by Add Fuel, an artist called Add Fuel. And it's meant to represent, to me it seems to represent ceramic tiling. But it's not, it's all painted on. So he was commissioned, I gotta get out of the street. He was commissioned to do that whole building. And then just a little, if you can see what we saw earlier on the other side of the boulevard, a little bit over there. What's also fun here is, you know, one reason I chose this episode today was because the last couple episodes we've been really heavy on old school, old world architecture with the Always Look Up tour and the facades and whatnot. So that's why I wanted to use a sort of a modern art episode today. But this is just one to cleanse the palate. A lovely old style 1900, from literally the year 1900 facade. As I said, just to cleanse the palate, and these little balconies are adorable. Sorry, there we go. That's really the only classical French building that we'll see today. Thank you, Sue Saint Laurent, for the support. That is wonderful. We're going to scoot ahead just to the corner of this building. You'll see that there's something else there. I just got to try to find a good vantage point. Just give me a sec to kickstand it there. Okay, here we go. Check this out. We'll do it from bottom to top. This is called hors des murs, or from out of the walls or outside the walls. And it's a young girl with these pink sort of surgical gloves, pink gloves, with a can of spray paint in her hand, looking like she's ready to do some graffiti or paint us a beautiful scene. And you can see it's nighttime. It's a very sort of poetic, dreamlike landscape, this robot figure. I love too that this girl has, she has Band-Aids all over her, and these ones here around her leg, I think are obviously made to look like a hand grabbing her. Very clever, very unique. And she happens to have, I don't even know if I can show you this, happens to have a Band-Aid on her forehead as well, so she's kind of banged up, this girl, but very cute and ready for action. There's a lull in the traffic, so let me give you a better view. This is by Bomb K, is the name of the artist, Bomb K. Oh, one last thing that I didn't point out. Kudos if you already saw it. There's a little mouse on her shoulder with a cup of coffee. Okay, I gotta get out of the street. A few more things to show you here before we wrap up the episode. Back on the old steed. Cute little cafe scene there. And this is a cute square called Place Pinel. Not too far from Place d'Italie. Very village-like. Little florist there. So we've got a few big pieces here around Place Pinel. Try to get us situated here. Okay, this strapping young gent here is an old doctor. Philippe Pinel. In fact, this square Pinel, the Place Pinel, is named after him. He was a physician in the 1700s and 1800s, an early pioneer of what would become modern psychiatry. Up until then, patients were, mental patients were chained to the wall, and he said, no, that's not humane. We can't treat them like animals, and he really worked hard to improve the living conditions of mental patients and tried to convince people that they could actually be treated and cured. So that's Mr. Pinel, for whom this square is named after. 2013, so it's rather old compared to what we've been looking at today. There's a Cuban artist who did this. Next up, I bet you didn't expect this next one. Hold on. Get off my bike. Check that out. Bet you didn't expect that. Now this one is obscured by trees, sadly for us. But this is the same guy who did, remember the early sort of purplish blue comic book girl, and I said her expression was kind of seductive or kind of annoyed and blah, blah, blah. Same artist here, so sort of a comic book pop art, Liechtenstein type of vibe. This is called Love Won't Tear Us Apart, and it's by the same artist by the name of Deface. This was the first one he did in Paris, and this gentleman, we can't quite make it out. Let me show you a little. He's in sort of 1950s military garb with the khaki pants and the green military issue shirt. And according to the artist, this represents that even when our loved ones are gone, when they've passed away, their memory lives on in us, and we still love them and embrace them in our memory. So that's the symbolism happening here. Although the artist, like I mentioned earlier, Deface was asked, what exactly does this represent? What's the meaning? And he said, honestly, the passersby can make up their own story because it's usually even better than what I could come up with. But yeah, it's the souvenirs or the memories of loved ones and the fact that they never leave us and live on through our memory. Thanks so much, Sandra Hendricks, for huge support in the chat. She says, love this. I'm watching from the hospital where I'm recovering from orthopedic issues. Oh no! I told the docs I have to have 100% recovery because it isn't cute to hobble around Paris on a walker. Oh, good on you for keeping your sense of humor, Sandra. I'm sending you many healing thoughts here from Paris. And I'm sure all the other freaks are as well. And thank you so much for the generous support. It means a lot. Look at this little pink number here. It's called The Project. And it just goes all the way up that corner. It almost looks like piping or plumbing, but I don't think that's exactly what's going on. There might even be lettering, I think, tipped on its side. 2019, so it's another very recent one. So many of these just arrived. I couldn't have done this episode at the beginning of this series, episode number 1 or 2. These wouldn't have even been around. Okay, let me run over here. Sorry for the sloppy camera work. But I've got a good one to show you right here. Beautiful girl with this sort of headdress. It's from 2014. It's a rather older painting by a Spanish artist called Bitoy. And this artist likes to highlight and honor women from history that have been a bit forgotten by history. These very strong, beautiful, feminine characters who succeeded in a male-dominated world. She was an American dancer and actress and artist's model. Her name was Evelyn Nesbit. She was very beautiful, very successful. She had a lot of success in Philadelphia, New York City. And she was an absolute star in the early 1900s, Belle Epoque, turn of the century US. Spent some time in Paris. She visited Paris as well. And this actress model, Evelyn Nesbit, she also her fame was enhanced by the fact that she got caught up in this deadly love triangle of sorts, where her husband actually shot and killed another man who was enamored with her. And there were not one, but two murder trials, very public, very personal murder trials where she had to talk about her relationships with these men and whatnot. And so it was very harrowing for her and in all the newspapers. And for the early 1900s, it was sort of like the OJ trial. Two separate, very public and very dramatic murder trials where her husband ended up in a mental asylum after killing this other man. So a lot of crazy stories here embedded in the streets. Let me just give you the pan around. And thanks so much to Heather Moffat. She says, "What beautiful murals. Thank you for sharing them with us." Beautiful light. Back on the bike. There's something about this little corner restaurant that I find very charming. It's an Italian place called Delfino. I have no idea if it's good, but look at that location. It's cute as a button. The last piece of street art I want to show you is a very small one, but a very cute one. Very small. Just right there. In 2013, they decided to, in the 13th Arrondissement, they enacted an initiative where they would ask a few artists to paint portraits of the locals here. Local characters that had become known by everybody and respected by everyone. And this is a gentleman, an older gentleman that went by the name of Papy Dance, or Papy Dance. And it's because it's a sad but cute story. What happened was he was 78 years old, and his wife passed away, and he was depressed and lonely and spent a year in his house and never went outside, but then realized that he had to decide between life and death himself. So he decided, I'm going to go out and live. So what he started to do was he took a stereo and a PA system, threw them all in a big shopping cart, and went in front of the local mall here in the 13th Arrondissement, where everyone would do their shopping, and he would just dance. He would crank up the music, sometimes very modern hip-hop music, and he would just groove and dance, and people would come and dance with him, and he became sort of a real beloved character, and everyone called him Papy Dance, or Grandpa Dance. And people would take photos and videos and applaud him and encores, and he became really a mainstay of the 13th Arrondissement. You can actually go on YouTube after this if you want, and you can just search for Papy Dance, P-A-P-Y, and you can find videos of him doing his thing. He recently passed away, which is sad, but he's quote unquote immortalized in this beautiful portrait here, kind of looking down over this lovely Place Pinel in the 13th. Okay, folks, that is all I've got to show you for today. So maybe we'll finish here. Thanks, Tim Keys. I really appreciate the support. Let me get out of the way here, actually. Sorry. Maybe we'll end it on the florist. I appreciate the amazing support that you all showed. Thanks for clicking the thumbs up and liking this video, because it does help get the word out, help spread it around. And you were all extremely generous today, and I appreciate that. You're always very generous. And if you are if you want to support this project, you'll find links in the description for that. Via Patreon, you can support me with a monthly pledge, or there's my PayPal info, my merch store, and on and on and on. Or you could just share this video. If you are currently a Patreon supporter, you know the drill. We're going to do a tour extension if you want to continue the good times here. I've got some more street art to show you privately. Also a cute little leafy alleyway that's really charming, as well as that church that we've seen in the distance a couple of times today. So thanks. I can see Debbie saying it was great. I really appreciate that. Thanks for being so appreciative, everybody. Peggy says, merci, screenshots will be uploaded later today. We can always count on Peggy for those great screenshots of the episodes. Ah, thanks, James Jackson. He says, one last push for everyone to thumbs up. Yeah, you know, it bugs me when I see YouTubers say that. Like, don't forget to like and subscribe. It's so cliche. But the truth is, everyone says that because it really does help give your stuff a push and not get lost in the endless chatter of the internet. You know how it goes. Oh, thanks, Sharon Peterson. She says, this one has blown me away. Thank you so much, Corey. Oh, thanks, Sharon. Appreciate you. I hope you're able to join us on the tour extension in a few minutes. Thanks, Camilla. I'm glad you enjoyed this. Phyllis, oh, thank you so much, everybody. Thanks, Barry Parks. It's great to have you here. Mountain Bruce in the house. Missed most of it, but we'll check it out. I'm sure you will, Bruce. I appreciate it. Better late than never when it comes to you, Bruce. That's what I always say. Okay, folks, we're going to wrap this up and give me about 5 minutes or so and go meet me over in the Facebook Cafe Chats group as usual. And I'll show you a little bit more of the city. Take care. I'll see you next time for another episode. If you can't bring yourself to Paris, I'm going to keep bringing it to you. And hopefully I'll find something totally different and unique and thought-provoking for our next episode. Or maybe, who knows? I can't promise. I mean, why am I making promises that I don't know? I'm writing checks I can't cash, potentially. Anyway, another long, drawn-out goodbye. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. And I'll see you very soon.